Okay, so what I'm going to do is, let's just start here. I'm going to close that screen here. I'm in standard Microsoft Excel at the moment. All right, I've got nothing added into here. This is just a very, very standard basic spreadsheet that I have in front of me. Along the top of the screen here, I have got an option which is add-ins. And if I go into that add-ins, I've got a couple of different plugins here. One is SAP Business One, and the other one is Q&A Excel, which is what we refer to as Vision. I think it's been around for about 18 years now, and for the majority of those it was called Vision, although it has recently had a name change. So we're going to go into Q&A Excel here. The first thing it's asking me to do is to log in, and as I log in here, it's showing me the products that are available to me. So I'm going to log in with access to the SAP Business One product. Having logged in there, you'll see that menu refreshed itself, and I've now got a number of different options as part of that menu. I think as a user, some of these I use, some of them I don't use. There are obviously areas that I use more heavily than others. And the ones that I'm going to focus in on today are the summary link and the summary report areas of the system. We'll then go through things like the cube analysis, through the drill down functionality, through the alert functionality, and through some of the utilities here in terms of macro builders, offline formulae, outputting to PDF, etc. But for now, the first place that I'm going to start is within the summary report option. As I go into summary report here, it pulls up a window for me. The window is configured with three main areas on it. The top area here is my mandatory filter window, which I have to complete all of the questions that are in that window. Down here I then have a selection list, and then I've also got my output window. So looking at the top window that I have here, the first question here is which product am I looking at, and in this instance it's SAP Business One. The second question then is which company within that product do I want to look at. And I've got a whole range of different products here, different companies within Business One, and I can then just select the company that I wish to look at. The next question that then pops up is which table within that database do I want to have a look at. And this information then is all coming now from SAP Business One. So the menus that you see reflected here are those menus that exist within Business One. I'm actually going to let me just drop out of here for a second and pull up Business One and just cover a couple of areas within here. So if you look here, I've got the financials, the sales, the purchasing, the stock management. So these are the menu options that you're seeing as you go into Vision. If I look at a particular document within SAP, so I've pulled up a sales order here. It could be a purchase order, it could be sales invoice, it could be anything you choose. But what you'll see as part of this document is there are two main areas on this document. At the top here, I have my customer name, my contact name, my posting periods. I then have down here my totals, my owners, etc. And these are all of the header parts of the document. And then within here, within this gridded box, I then have the line level information. So as we go through Vision, it will ask me whether I want to look at the header information or at the line information. And those are the two components that it's referring to. So coming back into here, if I go back to my summary report here and open my tables, it's saying, okay, which tables do you want to have a look at? So I'm going to focus in on some of the sales area, but it could be any part of the system. So under financials here, I have the maintenance, I have the chart of account options, I have the ability to look at the transactions within the system, both posted journals and journal vouchers. I can have a look at the budgets within Business One. I can have a look at the setup here for profit centers and things like that. Within the sales section here, maintenance here relates to customers. Opportunities and quotes here relates to the sales opportunities piece, so that sales opportunities section within Business One. And then I have two main areas here. I have got sales and accounts receivable. So the sales will look at orders, quotations, delivery notes, and returns. And then the accounts receivable will look at down payment invoices, credit notes, and actual invoices. So I can pick which area it is that I wish to start from. So if I select the sales area, my then two questions are, do you want to have a look at the sales header document, or do you want to have a look at the sales transaction lines? So at this point it's asking me whereabouts do I want to start. So I'm going to select the transaction line. Having selected that, it then brings up two further criteria for me. So as I said, this is a mandatory filter window, and the questions that are asked within this filter window will change dependent upon which part of the system you want to have a look at. So here it's saying, do I want to look at quotes, orders, deliveries, or returns? So if I select sales orders within there, and then it's looking for a document number. So I could select all different document numbers from within there. Having selected my sales transaction lines here, I now have a selection list on the left-hand side, which are all of the fields that exist within that sales transaction line start point. So I've got my document type, I've got my sales order number, I've got the row number. If you remember, we're looking at that gridded section. I've then got my item information, I've got my quantity, I've got my price, I've got my row total, my warehouse code, warehouse name, my salesperson. So at this base level, this is looking at all of the fields that are possible across that sales order column. Now, one thing that Vision does is when we've selected here, I want to look at the World Office database, the configuration of Vision will look at your setup within Business One. And if you have created user-defined fields within Business One, those user-defined fields will be offered to you to report against within Vision. So every time you log into Vision, it will check and see if there are any new user-defined fields and add them into what is called the Surduct. So this piece here is the Surduct, and this is presenting all of those fields that I have within Business One. So each of these, my client rebates, my returns actions, my start and my end date, are user-defined fields within Business One. So at the base level, we've got all of the column information from my sales order. But what you'll see is I also have a number of plus options here, which will allow me to go through and interrogate different parts of the system. So whilst I'm starting at the sales order line, what I could do here is to go back to my base document and have a look at my sales quotation. So I could say, take my sales quotation and list everything that I've quoted for, and then show me what percentage of those have been converted into sales orders. All right, so I can go to base documents. I can also go to target documents. So here it will allow me to move across to my sales invoice side. So I can pull data from multiple parts within Business One. I can also here move from my sales transaction row level up to my header level. Okay, so this is now looking at, instead of the gridded box, it's now looking at the customer, the posting date, the document total that we talked about as being part of that header. And then from there, if I go into CCRD here, it's then moving on to my business partner record. So it's now looking at my business partner group information. It's looking at the tabs on the business partner. So the information that's held on my general tab, the information that's held on the payment terms and the addresses tab. Okay, so whilst we have started at the lowest level, we can push out and gather information from many parts of Business One. So what I'm going to do here is then to start to populate my output window. And I can do that via drag and drop, or I can do it by double-clicking any of those items, and it will put that detail in the output window. So here I have customer code, I've got customer name. I could pull my group name. I could come in, and a tip for you is that if you keep opening all of these options, you will get lost. So what I would do in each instance is just to close down the table that I've been looking at and return to the base before I then go into my next data point. So here I've said, give me my code and my name from my header, give me my group name from my business partner, and now I want to go into my items and pull out my item code, item description, and item group, and then I'll pull out my quantity, my price, and my row total from, again, from the base lines. Anything in red here is a calculation, so it's showing me which tables are, which fields are calculated or numerical fields. Having output that information at the very base level, I can just say OK. And what that will do is to drop that information for me directly into an Excel spreadsheet. So I now have a listing here of all of my customers, the groups that they sit within, which items they've purchased, which item groups they belong to, and then the quantity, the price, and the row total. All right, and you can see as I scroll down here, all right, I've got all of my different customers and everything that they've purchased. Now, it looks very boring, okay, it's just a straightforward list. I do have some formatting options within here, which I'll go into in increasing levels of detail, but I can start to put some of the standard Excel style formats on here. So if I come down that list, there we go, we'll just pick Accounting 2 there. That will drop it out, okay, with a slightly different format associated with it. Just minimize. Okay, and then we can switch off the grid lines. Okay, so I've got a listing report. Now, if I look at the fields on the report here, each of these fields are just standard independent fields. There's no calculation, there's no formulae behind them. But if I move into the top left-hand corner, you'll see this is where it is holding the vision detail. So at any stage, I can double-click and go into that and ask it to show me the report format again. Now, as we said, this is the filter window, and at the moment I've got a very straightforward list within Business One. If I wish, I could drag my customer code into that filter window, and then by double-clicking on it, I could then choose to run it for a specific customer. So just run this report against one customer, all right? And then that will just give me the detail there for that one customer. What I can also do here is to build that customer detail in as a filter into my report. So instead of hard coding it as I've done in this instance, I can say, look at that cell when you want customer information, and that will tell you the cell, that will tell you the customer that I wish to report against. So cell referencing it there, you can see it's picking up the correct values, and then having done that, what it's done is created a join between that customer field and my output field. So if I double-click on there now, it will then allow me to pick a different customer that I want to run that report for. All right, and then I can recalculate my worksheet. So I could do that on customer, I could do it on group. So again, if I come back into my query here, I could say bring my customer group up there and look at that cell for my customer group. So I could then say run it here for all customers, where the group is, if I use the yellow drop down there, retail stores. And then on a right click, I've got an option there to recalculate my worksheet. And now it is just running it where everything is retail stores. Now, if I were bringing in dates or any of the analysis dimensions into Business One, I can also use those fields as selection criteria. Now, instead of using a right click on here, what I can also do is to build in a macro. So if I come into here and come into utilities, I've got an option there which is a macro builder, which will allow me, as I say, to put a button on the screen to recalculate my report rather than me having to go right click, recalculate worksheet. So if I come in here, there's a whole range of functions that I have within here, but I'm going to select the recalculate worksheet option. All right. Down here, I can apply multiple steps within my macro builder, so I can build fairly sophisticated macros. If I then come into options here, I can calculate one here which is recalc, or create one here which is recalc. Now these macros need to be unique, so each of the macro names that you set within the system has to be a unique macro name, okay, or within a certain spreadsheet. So if I just say OK there, I've then got my recalc button on there. So I can then come into any of my filter criteria, determine what it is I want to run my report against, and then refresh my report, and it will run it against that data. Now, let's keep going. All right. So in terms of the columns that I've been provided here, I've got my customer code, my customer name, my group name, item code, etc. And then I've got quantity, price, and row total. As I open up this query, one of the other options here I've got is row gross profit. So I could add that field into my report, and then that would bring me out the gross profitability on that particular of that item. But one thing I don't have within my list here is a gross profit percentage. Right? So what I want to show you here is the ability to create user-defined outputs. So clearly within Microsoft Excel, what I could do is say, all right, give me my row gross profit, divide it by my row total, and output it as a percentage field. But if I do that, then that doesn't give it the flexibility to expand and contract based on the report that I'm running. So if I build it into and embed it into my query, then it will expand and contract. So I've got an option here which is user-defined output. And I can then say I want to create a field that's GP percentage, and I want to take my row gross profit, and I want to divide it by my row total, and I want to output this field as a percentage field. Okay, so I've got a number of different options. Now in creating that output, I can do all sorts of things. So I can select any of the fields from Vision. All right, it doesn't have to be specific output fields that I put in my selection list. And I can also within here start to bring in mathematics and dates and cell references. So if you want to calculate the day sales outstanding or the average length of time it's taking to receive cash against invoices, you can use some of these functions to do that. Okay. Here I've just got a straightforward one field divided by another, outputting it as a percentage, and you will see that that then appears in my output window. So if I say OK there, I've now got my GP percentage field appearing in here. Now, there's a few things that I can do with that field. Again, if I come back into here and open it up, this is the basic level output. But if I go to Format Tables behind here, I can start to format either that cell or that row based upon what data is within it. So here I can take my GP percentage and I can drop it up there, and I can say if my GP percentage is less than 0.2, so 20%, I want to change the font color to red, and I want to apply it to the whole row. All right, so that will start to flag up for me where something has breached my gross profit percentage tolerances. So it will show me conditionally any, as I say, any exceptions to the rules that I've applied. Now what I could also do if I wanted to is to take that GP percentage and apply that as a filter. So I could say only show me where it's less than or equal to 0.2, right? And now it's just brought me those filter criteria. Right, so just show me those exceptions. I'm not interested in the good ones, I just want to know the bad ones. And then we can take that out as well. Okay, so now show everything. The other thing that I can do within here, if I come into here, is I've got an option within this to create an alert that relates to it. So I can start to build triggers into this report, which we'll come onto later in Vision Alert. So within here, I can create a new alert here called GP breach. Okay, and then I've got some options here around emailing it. So what I can do there is, using the Vision Alert product, I can say, run this report, and this alert is triggered, then send it to somebody. So it can just sit in the background and be running a query, and if something happens, then it can distribute the information. All right, so you're not bombarded constantly with information coming through. It's just picking up the exceptions to that and sending those exceptions out. Okay. All right. What I'm going to do now is to just run this for more people. Okay, so now I've got all of my different customers within here again. Now, in terms of the formatting, everything that we've done on the formatting so far has just been to specify one of the standard Excel output options. Within here, I can say give it no format, all right, and say don't output the table names, don't output the totals, just output a list. Okay, so that will then just restrict it and give me no formatting whatsoever. My other option within here under the report style is to use, instead of using the auto format, I've got an option to use a designer, which is where I can start to create my own output format for this report. So within the designer here, right, it's listing for me up here all of the fields that are part of my output. So what I can do, let's just add a couple of columns here. Right. What I can do within here is to start to drag these fields down into my output window. But what I want to do is actually to build a report that is grouped by customer. So on a right-click again here, I can add a section, and I can add a header and a subtotal, and I can say header and subtotal on change of customer code. So I'm going to give myself a header, I'm going to give myself a subtotal there. I can change any of the colors that relate to this. So if we just put some, oops, the full color there is black, right? And we'll change the background color to, I don't know, to green, something terrible. I'm sure it'll look horrid. But I've got the ability there to create sections, right? So now I've got those different sections in my report. And then I can drag my fields down. So let's just take that item out of there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my customer code up at my header level here. And then I'm going to put my customer name at my header level as well. And then I'm going to take my, let's put the group name on the header too. And then I'm going to put my item code in the body of my query, my item description in there, item group, quantity, you get the idea here, bring the price through, bring the total through, bring the gross profit through, and the gross profit percentage. And then what I can do within here is then to start building some totals. So on a right click here, I can add a field total against those particular fields. Right. Now, if I just say OK here then, what that should do is to completely change the output of my report. Right. So in running that report now, I've got my header and then I've got subtotals there for each of my particular customers that I have within the report. If I wish to also, if I come back into here, I can say within my report style, if I edit that again, I can say give me expand controls and collapse everything to start with. Or I can say apply a page break. All right, so set it up for printing and apply a page break on change of. So if I run the report again now, it will bring it up here with all of my expand controls, so everything is contracted to start with. I can then open up any of the particular ones that I want to look at, or I can say here, open up everything. So that's giving me the ability to design the layout of the report that I've got. Okay. All right. Slightly different example, if I come across to here and come into my demo report pack that I've got an aged AP report. Okay. Within my aged AP report here, what I'm doing within this report, as well as conditionally formatting the output so that I can have it expanded or contracted, what I'm also doing is conditionally formatting the columns here. So I'm saying that in this report, and if I come into my query, let's run that a second. I'm having trouble running that. But if I come into here and change my aging bracket to 30 days, what it will do here is to change my output I'm going to close that worksheet. I may have opened the wrong one. That's altogether better. So if I open that now and then refresh that report, you'll see it's now running based on 30, 60, 90 days. So I can change my aging criteria here at will, and it will now run on 80, 160, 161 days. Okay. Now within that report formula, again, I'm using a report style here, which is the designer, but what I'm doing on my output, if I select the particular field, I am adding a filtered column on here. So I'm then conditionally looking up the posting age, so the actual age of that document. So then conditionally we can say, look at documents that are between 0 and 10 days, between 10 and 20 days, and between 20 and 30 days, and break those out into different columns as part of the layout. So within the actual report that I've got here, you'll see I'm only putting out the value once, but then I'm using that value multiple times to say, and just give me where that value is between 10 and 20 days. And now give me that value where it's between 20 and 30 days. Okay, so within the reporting, you can get fairly sophisticated in terms of the layout and the type of output that's giving you. All right. Now, everything that I've done so far has been based on listing style reports. Okay, and indeed, let me just do one or two more. If I come into my summary report again here, there are a couple of other functions I'd like to show you. So let's just create a basic report again. And what I'll do here is I'll output my customer code, my customer name, and I will output within here the row total. So what all this is going to give me, just as a very quick report, is each of my customers and how much money have they spent with me. Now if I come back into here, what I could do with this row total if I wanted to is to sort it. So I've got a sorting option here which will allow me to say take my row total and sort it into descending order and show me the top 5 rows. So this will give me my top 5 best-selling customers. All right, so very quickly just filter it, sort it, and just show me the top 5. Okay, I can remove that again just by dropping that down, and that will then show me everything again in my report. So I've got the option, if we look through the middle here, I've got the option here to have a user-defined output. I've got the ability here to sort and filter. I've also got an option here around a different extraction type. And as I've output that row total, it's come out with a sum type. If I come into here and output it multiple times, you'll see it's got slightly different extraction criteria. So if I run that, what that report will now do for me is say, okay, this is the total value of the sales orders you've had from the customer. This is how many sales orders you've had. This is the average value, the minimum value, and the maximum value. All right. So just using those extraction types within here, if I double-click there, I can sum them, I can count them, I can average them, minimum and maximum. So average day sales outstanding. All right. Average number of days to pay a particular invoice. Average days to convert sales orders into delivery notes. Okay. All right, so let's come out of there. Now, as I say, everything that so far has been done based on listing type information. But what you can then do also is start to build in some more directed style reports. So if I come to here and just create a new sheet, what I can do within here is to create a report layout. This isn't the Blue Peter, maybe it should be. But what I'll do here is just to put in some nominal ledger accounts that I've got. Okay, so those are my GL accounts. I could put my period up here. Let's put in my cost center in there as well. And so I could say here, right, so build in some filter criteria within here. And then what I can do at the top, obviously you can put various descriptions and things in there. So I could put in period, and I could put in year, right, to pull in specific information in those fields. Now, instead of going into my summary report, what I'm going to do is go into a summary link option here. So I'm going to output only one single item into a particular cell. So coming through here, it's going to say, where do you want to look? And I'm going to say, I want to have a look at financials, I want to have a look at the transactions, and I want to have a look at GL transactions. It's then saying which GL account do I want to look at. So I want to look at this GL account here, and it's then saying which posting period do you want to look at. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say my period 2 option there. All right, so the field that I started in here was just the period option. Now, in terms of an output, I can then determine what it is that I want to output. So I'm going to output my balance in sterling. And then if I come through here, I've also got an ability to filter it by profit center code. And again, I can then look at that particular point on the report. Okay. All right, and it's returned a 0 value for me, which is to be expected, fortunately. I think if I recalculate my worksheet now. Okay. Now, what I can do here is I can take that field and copy it across, and then I could come into the second one here and say, instead of looking at just B2, I want to have a look at A2 to B2. All right, and then that will now look for me across the whole area. All right, if I change this here, let's just make that all for the moment, and then recalculate my worksheet. So I've now got my profit in the period, which is period 2, and my profit in the year, which is across period 1 and period 2. These are coming out as negative values at the moment, so if I come in and just double click, I've got a reverse sign option here because it's profit. So I can come into both of those and say I want to reverse the sign on them, and then I could take those, draw them down, and again recalculate my worksheet. So that is now looking at my actual for the period for the year across those cost centers. If I double click here, I've got the ability to specify the accounting period that I want to go up until. And indeed, here, let's go here. I'm going to go a long way back here. Okay, so that's going to pull in a whole raft more information for me. And I can then just come in and to filter that report and say, just give me information there for UK sales and recalculate your worksheet. So this gives you the ability then to create an interactive style report where the information is being put out at a cell level. If I come across to here, what you'll see is I've done exactly the same in this report here. Right? So the GL account, the posting date, the distribution rules, so the profit center is all being pulled from there. And I've then got a P&L report, which I can change the dates, I can change the area of the business that I want to look at, and I can then refresh my report based on that different data. Okay, so very quickly write different style reports within there. These numbers here, I do have the option to drill down and interrogate these numbers. So if I come into here, I've got a drill down option here, which will allow me to then get behind the detail of those numbers and specify what type of information it is that I want to see. So that's just drawing that information through for me. And then within here, I can say I want to see my account, I want to see my account name, I want to see the journal number, the row number, the posting date, and you can select what type of information you want to see in that drill through. And then that will break the detail of that value out into individual transactions for me. Okay, so if I close that. All right, so that gives me the ability to drill down. Now there's one further thing just to cover within Vision Excel. and that is the cube option that we have. So I'm going to come into here, and one of the options that I have here is cube analysis. So if I select cube analysis here, this will allow me to write a report in exactly the same way as I've done before. The difference in this instance is it's not going to return the information onto the face of the report. It's going to return it into an Excel. It's going to return it into a cube for me. All right. So as I come through here, again, customer code, customer name, go into the customer record and bring in the group name. Let's bring in the salesperson from the customer record. Let's go into the item information here, item code, item description, item group. We'll bring in the row total. What else? Let's just stick with that now. Let's bring in the accounting period as well. So let's go into the header information here, and let's bring in my accounting period as well. Now, if I just accept this, the code here and the name will come out as different fields. But on a right-click, what I've got an ability to do here is to create combinations. So I can say pull out the code and the name at the same time. And then here, again, combinations, pull out the item code and the item description at the same time. And then populate that information into a cube. So what it's now giving me is my total sales value within my system, with the ability to then split that. So I could say show it to me by salesperson, show it to me by customer, or show it to me by salesperson here by posting period. So which sales guys have sold what across which accounting periods, or by item group. Right? So I can just drag that information through. If I wish, I can have it multi-level. So I can say show me which items I've sold in which accounting periods. Or I could take out my posting period again here and put my customer groups down the side and then my customers within those groups. So now show me which items I've sold to which groups in which customers. Okay, so you can then build those cubes, you can save those cubes, you can create graphs of those cubes, you can repopulate those cubes. Right, but again, that is another standard function within Vision Excel. So if we have a look at the list here, there are options around using a wizard to write these reports, but I think as soon as you've done it a couple of times, it's much easier to not use the wizard. And we've had a look at the summary link and the summary report. The reference link, instead of pulling data out, will allow me to pull out reference information. So I could design something like a customer statement and pull in the reference information relating to the customer name and the name and address information. Okay, we've had a look at the summary report. The format tables are where we change the colors of different rows. We've drilled down through our information. We've used the cube analysis. Data send, whilst it shows on that menu, is not applicable to Vision for SAP Business One. We've also had a brief look at the alerts function, and within the utilities here, we've created a macro. If you want to take any of the Vision reports that you've written and distribute them to people that don't have Vision, all right, what you can do is to save the report with offline formulae. So when they open up the report, it just gives them the data rather than the link to the underlying Business One structure as well. I've also got the ability to output any of my information to a workbook or into a worksheet. Okay, so that is all Vision Excel, right? I'm going to open up here Vision Executive because whilst everything that we've done so far is pulling the data into an Excel worksheet, Vision Executive here will give me the ability to open the information in a slightly different format. So let's open that up. All right, so it's a slightly different window that I've got here. Now, whilst it's a different window, the type of information that I'm reporting out through here is exactly the same. So I've got my chart of accounts information, I've got TB information, I've got top sales, I've got the P&L report. And if I look behind any of these, you'll see that the information that's being recorded in there is exactly the same as the information that I have within Excel. So I've got my mandatory filter windows here. Slight difference in that it's looking up here for my filter criteria. So it's not looking on the face of the spreadsheet, it's just an additional field that's shown at the top. But it is looking at a GL count, it's referencing the accounting period, and it's outputting the value and then reversing it to give me a positive number. So if I take this report that I've written here and query it, it's then giving me my runtime prompt. So it's saying, okay, which accounting period do you want to run it for, which date ranges do you want to run it for, and which year start do you want to run it for. So let's pick 2010 here. I'll also go 2010 on this one. Okay, so I can choose my filter criteria, and I can then go ahead and extract my report. Now, as I'm extracting it, it's saying, do you want to extract primary sheets or a drill path? If I extract the primary sheets here, what it will do is to just drop that information in as the half-dozen worksheets that I've got there. So I've got all of my detail within here. This includes cube analysis, so I can take my cubes and I can work with them in exactly the same way as I did before. If I look at my P&L report, there are a couple of slightly different things that I can do within here. So I can take my sales revenue figure here and I can choose to drill into that number. And as I drill into it, rather than me having to specify my drill criteria, which I can do there if I wish, it will also give me some options that I've used before. So here I can say drill into this by customer code, sorry, by item code and item description. Or I can say drill into it by customer code. All right, and it will then give it to me by customer code. All right, so I can drill through a particular number as I've done before. But what I can also do here, which is very different, is actually to break out my report. So in Excel, as we saw, if I want to run my P&L report here for a different cost center, I change the cost center and refresh the report. Within Vision Executive, I can say take this whole report, all right, so take the P&L report here and break it out by any of the criteria that you wish. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into here and I'm going to say break it out by profit center code. And what that will do for me is to create a different report for each of the profit centers that you have within Business One. All right, so using the analysis dimensions, you can create a breakout for each of the analysis dimensions. All right, again, the type of information that you have within here, you can output to PDF, you can output to Office, or you can output to HTML. So some people will use Vision Executive to create XML outputs where they feed internal intranet sites. Okay. The other thing that you can do when you're running this report is I've run this report and then I've drilled down into it, I've broken it out, and I've created the level of detail that I want to see within the report. But what I can also do here on a right click is to save my drill path. So I can say this is the normal path that I would take through this data, and I want to save that and reuse it. So when I then come to run my query again here, I can then select either extract primary sheets, or I can extract based on one of my previous drill paths and pull the data through that way. Now, this is quite a good way of presenting data to non-SAP users and to non-Vision users, because you can just give somebody a runtime license only of Vision Executive, and all they can then do is to open Vision Executive with a report that's been given to them, and you can specify they can't drill down, they can drill down, or it will open with a specific path for them. Okay, so you can give them very tailored reports which allows them to look at the detail of their data only in the system. Okay, now just one final thing within here. So we've had a look in detail at Excel. Executive is very similar in terms of the layout, but it can do slightly different things for you. And then the final piece that we have in here is Vision Alert. Okay, Vision Executive and Vision Excel are both part of the same licensing structure. Vision Alert is slightly different in that it's a server license. And what this will allow me to do within here is to create an event. So I can say I'm going to create an event here which is a monthly pack. And then what do I want to do? I want to open an executive workbook or an Excel workbook, or you can use it just to email people to tell them to put in their timesheets on a Friday at 4 o'clock if you want to. All right. But if I'm going to say here I'm going to open an Excel workbook, It's then going to say which Excel workbook do you want to open. So if I pick the one off my desktop here, I can then say I want to pick that workbook, I want to extract it, you can password them, so you can open them, extract them, and then I can look at any of the macros on the system. So if I've created macros in my workbook, I can say extract it and enable the macros, and then I can say, so extract it, enable the macros, and run a macro. So what that will enable me to do is to create scenarios, to say, open this worksheet, change the sales employee to Sarah, and rerun the report based on Sarah's details. All right? And then from there, I can choose either to print it, to save it, or to email the data out of the system. Okay? Or I could then output it to PDF and then email it. All right? So I can create it and tell it what I want to do with that data and how I want to run it. And then I've got the ability within here then to take that task and to schedule it. So it could be run this report on a Monday morning and email it to Sarah. Okay? Or run this report, and if everything's okay, don't do anything with it. But run this report, and if one of my alerts within the system has been triggered, then I can take it and email that report out of the system. All right? So Vision Alert there will give you the ability to schedule, to apply scenarios, and then to conditionally distribute reports either through email, through printing them, or PDFing them as you choose. Well, thanks ever so much, guys. It's been lovely to have the opportunity to talk to you today, and we hope to see you soon.
Absolutely, and like Sarah said, if you have any further queries or questions, please contact myself or your designated account managers, and they can provide you with more information. I hope it's been beneficial. Thank you very much for attending, and we look forward to talking to you soon.